Hey, it's Jordan again. You're at Crooked Path Forge. Expect you already know that, though. Time for my Anvil side chat. It's been a minute. It's been a busy 2 weeks, let me tell you. Week before last was all about this really amazing artist named Ellen Durkin. She makes what she calls forged fashion, really ornate, wearable art, kind of a mix between armor and lingerie, but all out of steel. And the things that comes out of her brain are just, they blow my mind. So she came to Gainesville for the Florida Artist Blacksmiths Association conference, which was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. She demonstrated and showed off her skill and talent and taught people how to make the kinds of things she makes. And the week before that, or the Sunday before that, she came to my shop, and I had her teach a 4-day class with some students to show them, one-on-one, the kind of stuff she does. If you want to see those photos, then find me on Instagram. They're all over Instagram. Crooked Path Forge on Instagram. I'm just not good at editing video enough to interpose these pictures on these Anvil side chats. Also, that takes time, and I'd rather just spend time hammering. So yeah, anyway, last week was pretty amazing. Got to spend some time with Ellen, got to spend some time with 3 really amazing students, members of FABA that I had, kind of known and just got to get to know better and hang out with and really have a good time. And hopefully we expanded their brain pans just a little bit as well. And gave them more things to think about. Yeah, when it comes to steel, that's something that I always find as someone who makes largely tools, and that mostly means knives. You can really get sucked into that, just making knives, just making axes, and you can forget there's this whole other world of blacksmithing out there. To get excited about. At the conference itself, that was another busy weekend. Even if I hadn't been called on to demonstrate, we had a guy who was supposed to come in and demonstrate knife making, and he had to cancel at the last minute. Kind of a bummer. People were really looking forward to see him, but they asked me if I could do it, and so I did. And I demonstrated sort of my style of knife making, which is to forge it all, or forge as much as possible. So I did a dagger. I forged a dagger with a dragon's head as a pommel, and the guard was just sort of dragon-esque. It had some little pointy, curled quillions, I don't know how you say that. But there was a dagger with a guard that looked a little bit like, either claws or teeth of a dragon. So it worked out pretty nice. I was pretty happy with that. And then I started on a second blade, a single edge, sort of a curvy, elegant Persian style of knife. And I was pretty happy with that as well. Then I started doing a guard for it, which the proportions ended up being too big for the knife in question. So I fortunately had another blade looking for a guard and ended up making that work. And so that was a snake head, a viper's head. What was interesting is while I was making the dragon head, and I had several attempts at the dragon head, a few of them failed, one of the failures, and I say a failure, it just didn't look good enough to me for that purpose, right? I think he's a fine looking little fella here. Let me see if I can get this to focus on him for just a moment. Yeah, it's not going to want to. But you can kind of see he's not quite a dragon. He's got a little more of a sad dog look to him. And that's fine. I might find a use for him at some point. But anyway, it didn't work out great. So did a second dragon head. Second dragon also didn't work out great. Third dragon was the charm. But in the making of that second dragon head, there was this intermediary stage where I looked at it and I go, ooh, you could kind of get a little bit of like a viper or like a rattlesnake or some kind of, venomous snake vibe going on here. And what I did is I just sort of made a mental note of the steps that took me to get there. And, when I was finally done with the dragon head that worked, I went back and went, all right, let me see if I can make this viper. And I think that's cool. I think that's important to look at and remember as you're making something, especially for the first time, if you're experimenting with something, you really pay attention to what's going on and remember these little things that pop up because you never know when they'll come in useful later. And I love the texture. Once again, the snake guy is right now on my Instagram and my Facebook, and he's got, you can really get a good look at him there, the viper guard. It's like a D-shaped guard, so the body of the snake goes over the knuckle, a little curl at the tail. I brought it to my teaching shop for show and tell, otherwise I would be showing you here in person. But that was a conference. It was a good time. Good to see all the friendly faces and people there. If you are a blacksmith and you do not, and a knife maker, and not even a blacksmith, but a bladesmith, and you are not making use of your local blacksmithing clubs or guilds or whatever you want to call them, you are missing out big time, right? The internet is fun. This kind of thing is great. But that one-on-one interaction with real human beings in a physical location is extremely important when you're doing a physical thing like blacksmithing. You know what I mean? Like learning from other people and being inspired by other people and then collaborating with other people all can happen when you meet in person. You go to these meetings and it's changed my life for nothing but for the better. So I can't say enough good about it. What else do we have going on? That was a week before last. This past week was mostly cleanup and decompression from the week before, a little more chill of a week. I finished the snake, fitted onto the sword, kind of a short sword. All I really need to do now is put a handle on that blade and it'll be finished just in time for the Gainesville Medieval Fair, which is good. And I'm also working towards Christmas. By the way, I don't know how many people, like 5 people see this, but if you need something made for Christmas, now is the time to order that. Generally by the first week of November, I'm not able to make anything before Christmas, The world just gets too busy, life gets too busy, it takes too long to make shit. And there may be too many things on my order list by then. Right now, though, it's fairly clear. Just getting ready for the Medieval Fair, getting ready for a craft show that I do here in Gainesville. And the Gainesville Fair does really well with cooking stuff, cooking implements. I also decided I'm going to make a couple foraging knives. I've seen that become fairly popular, especially among the hippie folk. And there's a good, we've got a decent squadron of hippie folk that live in the Gainesville, Alachua County area. So I think they might really like when they're going to forage for mushrooms and things, a special foraging knife. That's not what this is. This is just my my regular start the day with a Crookshank knife. I made 2 today, actually. Another one of my rules is if I'm standing around going, well, it's not time to pack up, I still have energy. But I've kind of finished all my major projects. I don't want to start something new and big. I don't want to, do something risky. When in doubt, make another Crookshank till you can figure it out. Not even rhymed. I didn't mean that to rhyme. But on the food and cooking scenario, I've got 2 chef's knives that I forged out today. I want to do 1 more. I'd like to have 3 for the holiday season. I may do a cleaver as well. That might count as 4. And I'll certainly do some smaller, like petty chef's knives, and maybe a couple of paring knives and smaller kitchen knives. But I always like to have 3 big, nice chef's knives, fancy handles, that sort of thing. So this one's a classic sort of French shape, 8 inches, a little bit of weight to it, but we'll lose some of that weight after the heat treat and we grind this down to its final thickness. But there's your 8-inch classic chef. Then we've got a little bit of that Serbian style going on here, just with that kind of Wharncliffe or drop point, just to do something different, something fun. This one I may not drop as much weight off of and leave as a good cleaver-ish blade. We'll see how I feel about it, but I'm happy with the profile. I think there's some nice, graceful curves going on along the top there that I think are important to have. Then these are my 2 little foraging blades. I'll get up and show you these because they're quite small. Oh, now the camera wants to focus on that, huh? I suppose that could be a Doug Marcaida style defense blade as well if you wanted it to, but to me this is like a really nice little foraging knife. The curve of that fits right there on your thumb for when you're doing little snippies. That's the official terminology, I'm sure, right? And then I've also got this guy here. These interior curves, these recurves that have to be beveled and thin are pretty tricky. The metal always wants to bend away from the thin edge as you're forging it. So it's a lot of constant correction that actually makes these a little more difficult to forge and real tricky to grind. But that one also kind of came from a couple pictures I was looking at of some other folks doing some little, right? And to me that's the curve you want to get right there. If you can match that with your thumb, then that's a nice little do-jobber. All right, what else? Oh, and I got a commission for another flambadoo. See if this is cool enough to touch. Yeah. So I started making the cone for another flambadoo. And I really need to look at and talk to some people, probably some members of FABA, who are familiar with working pipe. Because I need to do another one of these, possibly 2 of these, for a guy in Scotland. And, the thing with these guys is, working this pipe is such a fucking bitch. It's a lot of work to hammer this down. You don't want this pipe to collapse. As you're hammering it, it could just fold in half and smoosh. And it's no good. You got to keep it nice and round, which means you have to constantly be turning it and hammering. You never hit the same place twice. And I know there's some jigs and stuff maybe we can get under the power hammer that will help that process out. And I love that because it's a lot of like rapid light tapping, not tapping, but hitting, but not super heavy, bang, bang, bang. But it's just, oh man, does it wear my arm out. That was what I ended the day with it. So I still got maybe another, that hole's about 3/4 of an inch round. I want to get that down to 1/4 of an inch round. And really that means I want to go down to 1/8 of an inch. and then drill it out to a quarter so that the inside is nice and smooth. If it's not nice and smooth, then the oil drips at funny angles and does weird shit. So anyway, I was a lot of catching up to do. This one's going 15 minutes instead of my usual 10ish for our chats, but that's okay. We're still having fun. I think I have some more room in my making schedule to make something fun and interesting for the medieval fair. Maybe. So if anybody who watches this is interested, give me a shout out on some kind of medieval weapon that you might like to see me make. Maybe I get it done for the fair, maybe not. I have some ideas, but sometimes it's fun to have a challenge. So if you've watched it this far, do something in the comments where you say, hey, make a dick for. And I'll be like, oh, what's a dick for? I never heard of that. You get the joke. But no, really, give me an idea. I'm looking for them. All right. I'll see you guys around. Thanks for sitting with me and catching up on what I'm doing. And, have fun. Stay safe. All that bullshit.